The X-Zone radio and TV show is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone radio and TV show or in any manner endorsed by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, Talkstar Radio Network, its affiliated stations, or employees.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
You doing that thing you do, breaking my heart into a million pieces, like you always do. And you don't mean to be cruel. You never even knew about the heartache I've been going through. Well, I try to forget you, girl, but it's just so hard to do. Every time you do that thing you do,
And welcome to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern. Then the show is repeated on our second network from 2 a.m. until 6 a.m. And then the third network picks it up from 6 p.m. until 10 p.m. And then the entire circle begins again, 7 days a week. If you'd like to give us a call, 1-800-610-7035. That is toll-free throughout the entire world at 1-800-610-7035. Our email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My first guest tonight, by the way, it is April the 9th, it's a Friday evening, is Mark Ireland. Now, Mark is the author of Soul Shift, Finding Where the Dead Go, a moving account of his personal quest for answers about life after death. Subsequent to the loss of his youngest brother, Mark is the son of Dr. Richard Ireland, a renowned mid-20th century psychic medium. While honoring his father's memory, Mark's own path took a more conventional trajectory in the field of business. An advertising executive turned author, Mark Ireland is also engaged in consciousness survival research experiments, collaborating with respected scientists including theorist Dr. Don Watson, developer of TES, and that's the Theory of Informed System. Mark contributed an essay to medium Alison Dubois' We Are Their Heaven, Why the Dead Never Leave Us. He is nearing completion of a second book on parapsychology and mediumship, exploring these topics in greater depth than in his present book. Other projects in the pipeline include an update and reissue of the Phoenix Oracle, penned by his father, renowned psychic to the stars, Dr. Richard Ireland, along with previously unpublished Your Psychic Potential, a Guide to Development, also authored by his father. Mark lives in Scottsdale, Arizona with his wife Susan. And Mark, welcome to the X Zone.
Thanks for having me here. I appreciate the opportunity.
Was your dad your influence into investigating the world of the paranormal and parapsychology?
I would say that was what got me going in terms of getting back into this as an adult. Mm-hmm. It was really, but the loss of my son really triggered it. So while I grew up seeing these abilities manifest in our household on a daily basis and how amazing they were, I kind of shelved. I never really wanted to be my father, and I took a conventional path, got a degree, went into business, got married, and had kids. Mm-hmm. But it was after losing my youngest son that I really went back and reflected on the things I saw earlier in life that gave me confidence that then there's more than just what we see in the physical world.
Now, Mark, you and I have to take a 2-minute commercial break. When we come back, I'd like to discuss with you your book, Soul Shift, Finding Where the Dead Go. Does that work?
Works for me.
All right. Mark Ireland is my special guest this first hour of tonight's show, X-Zone Nation. His website is www.soulshiftbook.com. And Soul Shift, Finding Where the Dead Go, is also available on Amazon.com. Once again, toll-free, 1-800-610-7035 is our toll-free number worldwide. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. I have some exciting news to share with you, the X-Zone Nation, in next week, yeah. It's all about paragators. It's exciting, and we can hardly wait to tell you, and it's killing me that I can't today, but I'll tell you as soon as I can, I will, and that's looking forward to next week. Check out Paragators' website. There's some clues there at www.paragators.org. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with Mark Ireland as we continue from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, here in the X-Zone. Mark Ireland is my special guest this first hour of tonight's show, X-Zone Nation, www.soulshiftbook.com. Mark, what was your inspiration to write your book, Soul Shift, Finding Where the Dead Go?
Well, it goes back to the day that I lost my youngest son, Brandon, which was January 10th, 2004. And I consider myself a normal, average person, but I'd been traveling the week before that day occurred. It was a Saturday. And my son told me he was going to go hiking on some mountains behind our home, along with some friends. And I had an unusual kind of premonition thing that morning, and I almost felt like this presence there. I didn't really hear any voices or anything, but I just felt this dire sense of concern about my son and tried to talk him out of going on this hike. But he ended up saying, we're going, Dad. He was 18 years old, and there really wasn't any turning him back. And he ended up passing away on that hike from what we later found out to be a severe asthma attack. So subsequent to going through that, it was kind of a purging initially of, finding things, letters and essays he'd written for school and different things, and just sharing information with people. But there was something that happened just a couple days afterward that kind of started the whole ball rolling. And that was that after Brandon had passed, I had spoken to my uncle. Now, my uncle had similar abilities to my father. He was also a psychic medium, but he was not really doing this on a regular basis any longer. He was in his late 60s, and my father had passed by that point in time. But my uncle asked if there was anything he could do, and I said, well, if you feel anything or you can share any information with me, I would really appreciate it. And it was about 2 days later, and this is several days before we got autopsy results. My uncle called me, and I was at the mortuary, and he said, I've got something to share with you. He said, your father visited me last night, and he wanted you to know that he was there to meet Brandon when Brandon passed, and he helped him cross over. At first, Brandon was confused, but your dad helped him adjust, and he wanted you to know that you're the best parents he ever could have had. Now, what he gave me in addition to that was highly evidential was he said that your dad said Brandon died due to a lack of oxygen in his bloodstream that caused cardiac arrest. And at the time this had happened, we didn't know what had really gone on or what caused his death because the symptoms were unlike any asthma episode or anything like that he'd ever had before. But about 3 days later, I spoke to the physician who had conducted the autopsy, and she had said that he had suffered a severe asthma attack that indeed dropped blood oxygen levels to the point where his heart failed. So getting that information from my uncle really kind of started the whole process. And then after that, there were just a series of things that happened. I met different people, starting, I guess, next with Alison Dubois, who's the subject of the show Medium, but the real-life one, and then met a number of other mediums that are fairly well-renowned, and then also some people involved in the research side of it.
Tell me about your father, Richard Ireland, who was a renowned psychic in the mid-60s to 80s. Can you share some of the personal stories about your dad that listeners might find interesting?
Sure. It was almost so commonplace for me as a kid growing up. The average person probably couldn't relate to those sorts of things. But what I would say is, in terms of demonstrating extrasensory perception in a public setting, he would normally cover his eyes with 10 strips of Johnson & Johnson medical tape, sealed tightly against the bridge of his nose and over his eyes, and then 3 black blindfolds over that and more tape over that. And then he would have people in the audience write questions and send them up. They could seal them in an envelope, whatever they wanted to do. It really didn't matter. He would hold the question, and he'd call out the name of the person, usually calling first and last name. More times than not, he would answer their question, but also go off onto other things. One of the, I guess, kind of the fun stories I can tell you was my wife now, today, after 30 years of marriage, if you go back to 1978, on our second date, I had asked her if she'd like to see my father's demonstration, and she said, yeah, that would be great. So we got there a little late, and we went in, and he was already doing this, the process I mentioned to you. He's giving messages to people in the audience. So I encouraged her to write a question. And so she wrote down her question and sent it up, and she had asked, when will my mother get married? Because her mother had been divorced and had been dating a man for quite a while, but was kind of non-committal. So my father gets her question, and he calls her name out, and she says here, and he says, well, Susie, I think you've asked about your mother and when she's going to be getting married, but I don't know about that, but you've met the man that you're going to marry, and he's with you here tonight. And then I chimed up and said, Dad, Susie's my date. And he said, oh, my gosh, I just married off my own son.
Now, that is interesting.
Another case, we brought a friend that was a complete skeptic named Mike Cusack, and the only way we could get him to go was by setting him up with a date. So we get there, and I'd actually written a note to my dad and sent it up while he was blindfolded that said, my friend Mike is a skeptic. Please blow his mind. And so when my dad got to Mike's message, he started going off on something about a young lady in Seattle that he'd spoken to, and that, this probably wasn't a good fit for him. And we just saw his jaw drop, and we didn't know what had happened until afterward. Oh, and then in addition, he had made mention about the woman he was with on the date that particular night and how they had this crazy chemistry. Well, as soon as he was done receiving the message and the show and the demonstration ended, we'd asked my friend Mike about, well, what did my dad say? What was the relevance? And he had told us that he didn't write anything about this on his question, but that earlier that day he'd been speaking to a girl in Seattle that he was interested in. So that just really set him back. And then on top of that, shortly thereafter, we were driving home, and he and the young lady were necking in the back seat of the car like teenagers. So it was pretty amusing to see that prophecy fulfilled.
What evidence leads you to believe that our consciousness survives the process of physical death, Mark?
Well, I guess a number of different things. Personal experience for me is the most valuable thing, although, I'm interested in science and research into this sort of thing. And there's research going back to the late 1800s through the SPR in London, some pretty significant evidence. William James, who was a psychologist at that time, had conducted a lot of studies of a medium named Miss Piper that were pretty compelling. And then, if you fast forward to even modern times, there's research done recently at the University of Arizona using single, double-blind studies. And now an offshoot of that is the Windbridge Institute, where Dr. Julie Beischel does up to quintuple-blind studies and basically asks mediums to give information about deceased individuals with no direct contact to a sitter, meaning a person who is related to or a friend of the deceased, and consistently gets high-quality information that's statistically way beyond what a control group would get. But in my personal situation, I've had readings from a number of quality mediums that provide detailed information that's pretty much known only to my father and my son, things that would not readily be able to be researched. And then also, my wife had an unusual experience. I've had something similar, but hers was, I think, more profound, in that she was sitting at the foot of our bed one night and felt our son's presence, and then saw him as a shadow figure out of her peripheral vision. Well, the very next day, we got a call from a friend who described an almost identical situation. He said that he was composing music, and at the time he was doing this, he felt a presence of another person there, and he saw a shadow figure out of his peripheral vision. And then eventually he felt pretty sure that this was our son's presence, and it kind of guided him. That force guided him in composing this song.
All right, but just let me ask you a question. When it comes to the friend, he did not identify what he saw or who he saw as your son. Could it be that it was just a psychological link that was made to your son, and that it's a very touching story that he composed a song based on the sighting? But in the realm of reality, that doesn't hold a lot of water, whereas the story that you told of your wife, that holds, in my book, as a person who likes to look at both sides of the sword, as holding a little bit more water.
Well, whether he came up with the song on his own and was inspired to do that, or whether he really channeled the content of the song, I can't prove that. That's what his feeling was. But I think what's compelling about that is that he had the same experience the next day, and he didn't know about my wife's experience, to be able to sense this presence and also see the shadow figure out of his peripheral vision. So for me, that's the more compelling part, even than the song, although the song's beautiful, and I'm touched by it.
What is evidence? Where is the scientific evidence that there is an afterlife and that mediumship actually does happen and it is real?
Well, it's, the University of Virginia is doing studies on this. Like I said, the Windbridge Institute is doing studies on this. But mainstream science doesn't subscribe to this. They think that the mind and the brain are the same thing, and that when your brain dies, you die, and there is no soul. So, it ties back to somebody's being open-minded and not buying into the materialistic paradigm that we're just simply a meat robot, if you will, and that our consciousness is nothing but firing of brain function. So the evidence comes from studies like I'd mentioned that are showing, results that are far beyond chance in terms of these mediums' ability to provide meaningful. So excuse me, we're running very short on time here for the for this segment here. So are we basing all this evidence on statistical analysis? Well, some of it. I think that's the best way that they can do it today, because you can't necessarily prove. The best they can do in terms of how to approach it scientifically is to see what quality information they're able to provide pertaining to a deceased person. And that's kind of the measurement. You can't prove that the person's there, that their essence is there. There's no way to prove that at this point in time. If there was some way to necessarily materialize somebody and take a picture of them, great. But
yeah. All right, Mark, stand by. We've got to take our break at the bottom of the hour. Mark Ireland is our guest this hour, X Zone Nation. www.soulshiftbook.com. That's www.soulshiftbook.com. He's the author of Soul Shift, Finding Where the Dead Go. It's available at Amazon.com. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
Rio gave him a ride, filled him with a hot meal. I was 16, he was 21. Rode with us to Memphis, and Papa would have shot him if he knew what he'd done.
Hi, this is Ken Elliott. When I'm floating around the universe, I always try to tune in to Rob McConnell.
Hi ho there, Twinkie Frog on Sesame Street. When I want to find out what's going on with UFOs or ghosts, I listen to the X Zone with Rob McConnell.
This is Les Corrigan from Target Internet Development. You're listening to Rob McConnell on the X Zone Radio Show.
This is John Hogue, prophecy scholar, and you're listening to Rob McConnell in the X Zone.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Mark Ireland is our guest this hour. He is the author of Soul Shift, Finding Where the Dead Go. His website is www.soulshiftbook.com. And Soul Shift, Finding Where the Dead Go is available at amazon.com. Mark, there's a negative connotation associated with most paranormal phenomenon. When viewed through the lens of certain religious aspects and certain people, including myself, when it comes to certain aspects of the paranormal, I think that there's nothing but a lot of fraud and deception involved. What's your how do you deal with this?
Well, it's interesting because I think some of the Old Testament disparaging remarks made about mediumship are mainly tied to fraud. Mm-hmm. And it's a concern of mine, too, because I know there are people that are fraudulent that are looking to take people's money. I would tell you that my father was a minister in addition to being a psychic. Mm-hmm. And I think at the base of he felt that he wanted to convey that his was a gift of the Spirit, and it was something that it was a God-given ability that was to assist people and help.
But let me ask you this question. If it is a God-given ability, how come God did not give it to everyone?
Well, does everyone know how to play guitar? Or is everyone a great hockey player?
Well, wait a sec. Hold on here. No. We're not, you said it was a God-given ability. All right? Picking up a guitar and playing it requires somebody to want to do it. Now, did your father want to become a medium? Did your uncle want to become a medium? How did they learn how to do it? Or were they...
It was a natural thing for them.
All right, it was a natural thing for them. So why isn't it, if it's a God-given gift, why isn't this natural ability, this gift, given to everyone?
Well, he would say that it is. But I think the latent ability you have can be developed more in some people than others. So back to my point about guitar, some people have more musical aptitude. So while you may be able to play 3 chords on a guitar, you may not be Eric Clapton, So in his case, he had this manifested naturally at a young age. When he was 5 years old, he was taken to the Columbus, Ohio Children's Hospital for corrective surgery on his eyes. Mm-hmm. After the surgery was completed, his eyes were cupped and bandaged, and they had actually tied him into a bed so he wouldn't mess with the bandages. A nurse felt sorry for him and asked him if he would promise not to touch the bandages, she would agree to let him out, and she did that. She went on her rounds, came back, found him bouncing a ball against the wall and catching it, but he still had the bandages on. After that, she brought some doctors in to say, look at this young man, this is unusual, and they did some other tests of their own. They put him in bed, had one doctor standing at the foot of the bed and another at the side, and kind of throwing voices to see.
No disrespect meant to your dad here, but how that's not explaining why there's negative connotation associated with paranormal phenomenon.
Well, let me go back to that, really, because there's two. You brought up fraud, but you also brought up the religious aspect. Mm-hmm. I think, religion in general, I think, doesn't want you to... I say that it's a control issue to some extent. So oftentimes they'll go back to Old Testament verses that say, you shouldn't do these things or you shouldn't get involved in divination, but they're the same books that say that slavery is okay. So I question, is that the Word of God saying that particular thing, or is that something coming from a cultural perspective of that day? If you fast forward to the New Testament, there's all kinds of these things happening. Jesus, in the story of the Transfiguration, is said to have been with and spoken to 2 deceased people, or 3.
So wait a minute. Are you putting psychic mediums in the same category as Jesus?
Jesus said, "All the works I do, you shall do a greater works than these." So he's saying, and in other passages, he's saying that these are ways to communicate, and these are tools to be used.
That's one interpretation of that verse. That's an interpretation.
I'm not saying that the average psychic medium has anywhere near the development from a spiritual or level, or that they are like a Jesus that way. All I'm saying is that those phenomena that I believe Jesus demonstrated, like clairvoyance with the woman at the well, where he told her that she'd had 5 husbands before, that the methodology is the same tool. Can it be used for good or bad? Yeah, probably either way. But if someone's coming from the right place, it can be a very positive thing.
But once again, how can you compare any medium, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to anyone here, but how can you put an everyday mortal medium, and I'm giving that the benefit of the doubt, in the same category as an iconic religious figure like Jesus? Like, isn't that a little pushing the limit a little bit too far?
I'm not comparing them in terms of who they are. All I'm saying is that he said that if you have the faith, that you can move mountains and that you can do these things. And all of his disciples, he said, you will know them because they will do the works I do. And they performed healings and did miracles too. So they weren't Jesus either, but they were followers. So all I'm saying is that I know spiritual mediums who are Christians, and they are trying to follow that path, and they feel it is a tool that's available to them to help people.
When a medium gets information, where do they get it from?
Well, that's something you can't prove because there's 2 schools of thought. One is the survival theory, which is that when we die, we have a soul that lives on in a form of personalized energy, if you will, and that there is a consciousness associated with that. And that soul can impart thoughts to the medium that could be symbolic or words or things like that. The other school of thought is that there's something called super psi, or that there's like this field of information that exists that could be tapped into by a medium or a psychic, and then they get the information from that perspective. I think some of the evidence that leads me to believe that it's actually communication with a discarnate are more subtle things, but there are differences in how the medium receives the information of that type versus more psychic information. For example, they'd note the sense of another presence being there, as opposed to just like a psychic thought popping into their head. Also, there's what are called cross-correspondence communications, where mediums can pick up information about someone other than who they were doing the reading for, and then later on it's validated through some independent research. So there's in a case like that, it could be argued that a discarnate entity intentionally sent that. So it's not like you went out and reached for it; it was sent in your direction.
What do you think that science is going to discover about psychic phenomenon with quantum physics and string theory?
Well, I think if you look at that whole area, it does give people a way to look at those things to say, maybe there is something to this, and maybe there is a way that I could accept this as being a possibility. Whereas if you view the world as just a bunch of physical objects that are firm and fixed, it's hard for you to grasp that. But when you do look and you say, okay, everything's made up of atoms, and under that subatomic particles, that really when you get down to the raw level, they're not even particles. They're vibrating energy, and sometimes that are going in and out of physical existence. It changes your perspective about what is real and tangible. I know Dr. Dean Radin recently released a book called Entangled Minds that touches on these phenomena and quantum physics and tries to reconcile some of those issues.
What does a person's psychological state have to do with the the information that they seek from a medium. For example, a person who's doing very well and has no problems will not be seen with a medium because they are not in psychological dire needs to communicate with someone to heal an inner wound. Has a psychological profile ever been done on people going to see mediums or psychics?
Well, first off, let me clarify one thing. I'm not a scientist. I'm just a layperson who's become interested in this and connected with some scientists and researchers.
Okay.
And mediums themselves. So I'm studying them from the point of view that you might have or the average person might have. I've done a lot of reading, and I have a reasonable understanding of the field. But I can't answer that question because I don't know the background.
Oh, all right, because the way that I've seen it over the years, not only doing this show, but working on television shows exposing psychics and mediums, is that people who go to a psychic or who go to a medium are emotionally upset. They're not secure. There's a problem that needs fixing. And I cannot understand why in today's society people go to psychics and mediums instead of seeking professional help. And that's what I was asking.
Okay. I'll answer that from the best perspective I
Sure.
can. If you've lost a kid, that's about the biggest trauma you could experience.
I agree, and honest to God, my heart is with you.
Okay. So that being said, we've met other parents who have gone through this, and it's been really healing to meet them and to commiserate, if you will, and become friends.
So would you say that going to see a psychic or going to a medium in this case is part of the grieving, the healing?
It's part of a healing process, I would say, if you go to a good one. But if I met someone who went to a fraud, and that was a very damaging situation. So I caution people, don't just run out and do this. You need to find out from people that you know and trust. If you want to do this, and I'm not suggesting it's for everyone, but you need to find out who you're going to. They're coming with decent recommendations. So, and to your point, more times than not, people probably are going, and some of them may be more credulous because they just want it to be so. So I'm not, I'm aware of that.
Understood.
But I will also say that, I've seen very specific information conveyed that's very compelling. And there are people I believe have this ability and that it's real. And I'm not saying it's everybody out there at all.
Let me just throw this hypothesis your way. Is it possible that what message the person or the medium is giving back to the person that they are giving the message to? All right, let me just use this way. Somebody went to see your dad or another medium. They ask a question. Is it possible that the medium is actually unknowingly or knowingly reading their mind, and that is a transference of ESP and has nothing to do with the other side?
Well, that is a possibility because, as I mentioned earlier, the super psi or clairvoyance or telepathy with the sitter is one of the arguments. So that is why some of these labs like Windbridge do tests that eliminate that as a possibility as best possible. I suppose it's going to be difficult to completely rule it out, but if a medium gives a validation of something that the sitter's unaware of, but later can be found to be accurate, that's pretty compelling. And I have some cases of that. And I know the researchers have found those sorts of things too.
All right. In your opinion, what is the most compelling evidence to support these claims?
I would say, going back to the research, if you're a science-minded person, it's going to be research done by the SPR, the research coming out of the lab at the University of Arizona, some of which is documented in the book, The Afterlife Experiments. The research being done right now by the Windbridge Institute, and I know that the University of Virginia is about to release some results on a study they did in what was a double or triple blind study. But for the average person, it's going to be experiencing this for yourself with a quality medium and noting, objectively, not emotionally, what information were you provided and how closely does that mirror the personality and the things that your deceased loved one would know.
You see, you just said how closely instead of exactly. And that, to me, raises a red flag, because if these mediums were so on, it wouldn't be closely. They would give specific, undoubted examples and unequivocal pieces of evidence that would that would lock it in, not closely resemble?
Well, when you consider the methodology by which they get the information, think about yourself trying to communicate with somebody with 2 tin cans and a string pulling them together.
That's an excuse. That's an excuse. That's not a reason.
Well, I would say some of them do give highly specific information. So to say that it's going to be just like I'm talking to you right now this way and it's that clear, it doesn't necessarily work that way for everyone. But a lot of the information can be very accurate and very specific. So to discount that when it is statistically overwhelming compared to a control group that can't provide that sort of thing, or even a cold reader that wants to come in, and try and replicate that or duplicate that, they're unable to. So,
Mark, stand by. We've got to take our final break here. Mark Ireland is the guest. His book is Soul Shift, Finding Where the Dead Go. It's available at Amazon.com. His website, www.soulshiftbook.com. My name's Rob McConnell. This is the X-Zone. All our podcasts are available free of charge, either at Apple iTunes. All you have to do is in the search engine on the top of the page, just put in Rob McConnell, and all our stuff is popping up left, right, and center. Or you can go to xzonepodcast.com. Right now we have our new player there with over 980 interviews that I've done over the last couple of years. Been doing this for 20 years. They expect me to put them all up? I don't think so. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break. Don't go away.
I got to make it better each and every day. So, honey, say don't you bet, 'cause you ain't.
Welcome to the world of mystery. Welcome to the world of the unexplained. Welcome to the world of the weird.
I'm your host, Rob McConnell, inviting you to join me in a new TV series as police investigators, forensic detectives, and scientists uncover the facts, reveal the truths, discover the mysteries, and expose the frauds in an all-new paranormal investigative series. Watch as Paragators puts the real back into reality TV.
Welcome to the world of Paragators.
Only on X-Zone TV from Relmar McConnell Media Company and SEFX 3D Films. Mark Ireland is our special guest. Mark, how do people know who a legitimate psychic medium is, or a legitimate medium is, because there's a big difference between the two?
You're going to have to go to someone that you are referred to by someone you trust and know well, or, like I keep mentioning, the Windbridge Institute, they actually certify mediums. So they put them through a battery of tests, blind tests, and based on the statistical, evidence that they are able to provide meaningful information about deceased people, they will certify them. There are some other, I think the Forever Family Foundation does something similar too. But, more often than not, it's going to be relying on someone you know and trust.
Now, the Windbridge Institute, are they a recognized research organization, or have they just popped up recently?
Well, it's actually, they're an offshoot from the University of Arizona. Dr. Julie Beischel, it looks like my battery on my phone here is going. Can I give you an alternate number?
No, we're going to have to say so long for now, Mark, because we are having some problems here.
I think it'll last.
All right, well then hurry it up, please.
Okay. The Windbridge Institute was founded by Dr. Julie Beischel. She formerly worked at the University of Arizona Human Energy Systems Laboratory, and she's got a board of respected scientists there, including Dr. Dean Radin, among others.
Whoops, it seems that we just lost Mark. Technology, what can I say? Exonation, our guest of this hour, who had a faulty phone. And you know what? When you're going to be doing a radio interview, it's not a good idea to not check your batteries, because it doesn't make you look very good or very credible. And you're talking about psychic phenomenon, mediumship. Shouldn't somebody on the other side have told Mark his phone was going to die? I have a hard time with this exonation, and I don't want to seem heartless. My heart goes out to everyone who's lost loved ones, and yes, we all have that emptiness. We all go through that grieving process. And if it's for healing, God bless you all. But this boy doesn't buy it. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the Talkstar Radio Network. 1-800-610-7035 is toll-free. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. And don't forget Paragators, www.paragators.org. We'll be back after the news at 6.5 minutes past. Don't go away.